Welcome to part 2 of this video dedicated to players whose careers ended too early. If you haven't seen the first part, it's available in the description. Today we're going to look back at 10 new stories, immense talents, interrupted paths, and careers that never reached their true potential. And we start right away with our first player. Dele Alli was a meteoric rise. At Tottenham between 2015 and 2018, he took the Premier League by storm. At 20 years old, he was already one of the most influential attacking midfielders in the country. Flair, goals, positive arrogance, everything pointed to him becoming a global superstar. But behind that rise, something cracked very early. His performances declined before everyone's eyes. And it wasn't just a matter of form. Alli was carrying psychological injuries, an extremely heavy past that was never dealt with. When his mental state collapsed, everything else followed. Little by little, intensity disappeared, discipline too. In 2022, he left Tottenham for Everton, a transfer presented as a fresh start. The reality was brutal. In 2 years, he played only 13 matches. A loan to Besiktas changed nothing. 13 matches as well, average performances, unstable behavior, and a deep sense of unease. And that's when his demons came back into the open. After returning to England following a hip injury, Dele Alli was filmed with a balloon in his mouth, inhaling laughing gas. The incident shocked people, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. Uncontrolled parties, excess, repeated nights out. His seriousness was called into question, and so was his professionalism. The president of Besiktas himself summed up the situation with chilling honesty. He said the club did not get what it expected from him, and that he hoped Alli would recover as a human being. In other words, the player was no longer in a state to be a professional footballer. When he returned to Everton, his level was no longer there at all. By June 2024, he found himself without a club. In January 2025, Como, the club where Fabregas works, tried one last gamble, a short contract, a final chance to relaunch his career, but nothing ignited. Performances were insufficient, motivation remained fragile, and in September 2025, less than 9 months after his arrival, his contract was already terminated. Today, at 29 years old, Dele Alli is once again without a club, a player who had everything to define a generation, but whose fall was accelerated by injuries, trauma, and a personal spiral stronger than football itself. In 2011, at just 19 years old, Jack Wilshere became one of the biggest hopes in English football. His performance against Barcelona in the Champions League is still a reference today. Up against Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets, he never panics, resists the press, drives the ball forward, and dominates midfields considered the best in the world. That night, many believe they are witnessing the birth of England's future leader. Wilshere has everything: vision, intensity, technique, courage in duels, personality, but it's precisely that courage that will accelerate his downfall. He holds onto the ball until the very last moment, waits for contact, plays in areas where tackles come hard, and his ankles take hit after hit. At 20, he suffers his first serious injury, a stress fracture. Then the relapses begin. Ankles, calves, knees, every comeback is followed by another setback. Arsenal adapt their training sessions, reduce his minutes, try to protect him, but his playing style constantly exposes him. His body can no longer keep up. He comes back, sometimes impresses, then disappears again. West Ham, Bournemouth, nothing works. His joints are too worn down. Doctors talk about cartilage that is almost non-existent. At 30, he brings his career to an end, far earlier than expected for a midfielder of his quality. Jesé Rodriguez was the jewel of Real Madrid. At La Fábrica, he was head and shoulders above everyone else. Explosive, powerful, unpredictable. His goal against Atletico in the 2014 Copa del Rey made the club believe it had found its next homegrown star. But in March 2014, everything collapsed. He tore his ACL at the worst possible moment. And even though he came back, his explosiveness was never the same. Real tried to relaunch him, but the old Jesé never fully returned. In 2016, PSG took a gamble on him for 25 million euros. And from there, his career went in every direction. Paris tried to loan him out to get him back on track, each time a few flashes, but never any consistency. At the same time, Jesé launched a reggaeton music career, Music videos, parties, reality TV, media exposure. Little by little, his life outside football took up more space than the pitch, and it showed in his performances. From 2021 onward, his trajectory became completely chaotic. In 2021, he joined Las Palmas to try for a fresh start. In 2022, he signed in Turkey. In 2023, he moved to Italy, to Sampdoria. A few months later, still in 2023, he made a brief stop in Brazil with Coritiba. In 2024, he tried a new adventure in Malaysia, which he left in June 2025. Then in July 2025, he returned once again to Las Palmas, a career that became unrecognizable, made up of constant changes, failed gambles, and missed opportunities. Bojan was Barca's prodigy. At La Masia, he broke all of Lionel Messi's records. He scored more earlier, more often. At 17, he broke into the first team and became the youngest goal scorer in the club's history. For many, Barca believed it had found its next phenomenon. But behind that rise, Bojan was living under immense pressure. In 2008, before the Euros, he suffered a panic attack that prevented him from joining the national team. He didn't dare speak about it publicly. And that anxiety problem would never leave him. From there on, his career took a different path. He moved from Rome to Milan, then Ajax, Stoke, Alaves, and Montreal, not to progress, but to escape an environment where every match had become a burden. The lower the pressure, the better he felt. The talent was there, but anxiety prevented him from sustaining success at a top club. Over the years, Bojan was no longer just facing defenders. He was facing his own mental strain. And in the end, it was that strain that definitively pushed away any idea of a return to the very highest level. In 2022, he ended his career at just 32 years old. His body could have continued, but his mind had reached its limits long before. Michael Johnson was supposed to be the future of Manchester City. At 18, he established himself in midfield as an already complete player, powerful, technical, intelligent in his movement. In 2007, he scored a sublime goal against Derby County, and England discovered a potential future midfield leader. Sven-Göran Eriksson counted on him, the press spoke of a future international, and City saw him as a future pillar of the club. But very quickly, his body let him down. Abdominal pain, then knee problems that never truly went away. Every attempt at a comeback was followed by another relapse. And behind the injuries, there was something else, a deep mental distress. Johnson would say later that he was living through a period of isolation and depression and no longer had the strength to handle the pace of professional football. He drifted away from the group, lost his connection to the pitch, and his physical condition deteriorated even further. Manchester City tried to help him, but nothing was enough. The player could no longer come back, neither physically nor mentally. At 24, Michael Johnson completely left professional football. No attempt at a rebound in the championship, no fresh start abroad. He cut everything off and rebuilt his life away from the game. Today, he lives a discreet life, far from the spotlight, after opening a real estate agency. Hatem Ben Arfa is one of the greatest natural talents that France and even the football world has ever known. At Lyon, he breaks through in one of the best teams in Europe and immediately shows an extraordinary technical ease. His solo goal against PSG in 2008 becomes a reference. Ben Arfa is capable of moves that almost no other player can produce, but very early on, his career takes an uneven direction. At Lyon and then at Marseille, flashes of genius alternate with internal tensions, a lack of discipline, and an insufficient consistency to establish himself long-term. In 2010, he joins Newcastle. The club believes it has signed an artist, but after only a few weeks, he suffers a tibia-fibula fracture that sidelines him for 6 months. Despite this serious injury, Newcastle still decide to activate the option and sign him permanently. And as soon as he returns, Ben Arfa reminds everyone why. He scores some of the most beautiful goals in the club's modern history with individual actions from another world. But once again, disagreements with coaches and his inconsistency create a ceiling he will never manage to break. In 2016, at Nice, he produces the most complete season of his career. He rediscovers freedom, confidence, and desire. He finishes among the best players in League One. It is this renaissance that earns him a transfer to PSG. But in Paris, everything collapses. Lack of playing time, internal tensions, then a complete exclusion for an entire year. An episode that permanently marks the rest of his career. After that, he strings together short spells. Rennes, Valladolid, Bordeaux, and Lille, always capable of a moment of extraordinary technical brilliance, but never able to rediscover real continuity. Today, Hatem Ben Arfa remains one of the greatest what-ifs in French football. A rare talent, a player almost everyone agrees was a genius, but who never managed to establish himself permanently at the very highest level. Mario Balotelli is the story of a player who had everything to become a world-class striker and who never managed to live up to the promise of his talent. Spotted very young, he made his debut at Lumezzane before being signed by Inter. At 17, he was already scoring in Serie A and the Champions League. Mourinho said he was an exceptional player but also unmanageable. That duality would define his entire career. In 2010, he joined Manchester City. Technically, he was above the rest, capable of moves that very few strikers could reproduce. But off the pitch, controversies piled up. Fireworks in his bathroom, missed training sessions. That constant contrast didn't erase the big moments. It was Balotelli who provided the assist for Agüero's title-winning goal in 2012, one of the most important moments in the club's history. But Balotelli never managed to sustain consistency. A return to Milan, then a move to Liverpool, where the adventure quickly fell apart. Just 4 goals. Coaches changed, chances came and went, but the same conclusion always returned: immense talent, insufficient discipline. In 2016, he revived his career at Nice, and there, over 3 seasons, he finally reminded everyone why they had believed in him. 43 goals in 76 matches, a return worthy of a top striker. It was the last true peak of his career. After that, his path became more chaotic. In 2019, he signed for Marseille but stayed only a few months. Then Brescia, Monza, Adana Demirspor, Sion. Short, irregular spells, sometimes effective, sometimes invisible. The 2024 to 2025 season at Genoa perfectly symbolizes this late stage of his career. 6 matches, no goals. Today, Balotelli is no longer the phenomenon announced at 18, but a player who has moved from club to club, unable to establish continuity. Ravel Morrison is one of the biggest wasted talents in modern English football. At 14, Sir Alex Ferguson said he was the greatest natural talent he had ever seen come through Manchester United. At the academy, he dominated everything. Exceptional technique, rare vision, effortless ease. In the 2011 FA Youth Cup, even with Paul Pogba and Jesé Lingard in the team, Morrison was the one everyone came to watch. But talent was never the problem. The problem was everything around it. He grew up in a difficult environment surrounded by negative influences. United tried to help him, but personal and legal troubles kept piling up, and Ferguson eventually accepted the obvious. The club could no longer protect him. In 2012, Morrison was sold to West Ham. There, he briefly showed what he could have become. His exceptional goal against Tottenham, a slaloming run finished with a delicate chip, made people believe in a revival, but it didn't last. Indiscipline returned, along with lateness and a lack of commitment, the same pattern as at Manchester. His career then became a long drift. He moved to Lazio, then went out on a series of loans in the Championship. After that, he tried to restart in Mexico, in Sweden, then at Sheffield United, Middlesbrough, and even in the Netherlands with ADO Den Haag. Each time, the same promises, the same disappointments. In 2022, he signed for DC United in MLS. He even scored a nice goal against Atlanta, but was quickly dropped from the squad and no longer allowed to play in the league. In September 2024, he moved to the United Arab Emirates to play for Precision. Morrison went from being a phenomenon announced by Sir Alex Ferguson to a player drifting through obscure clubs all over the world. He should have been a global star. He had everything to be one, but without structure, without discipline, and without stability, even the most natural talent can fade away. Jesé Lingard has one of the most puzzling career paths in modern English football. Trained at Manchester United, he takes a long time to break through, but when he finally does, he does so with a bang. Between 2016 and 2018, he scores in the FA Cup final, the League Cup final, the Community Shield, and becomes an important part of the England national team. His goal against Panama at the 2018 World Cup goes viral worldwide. At that point, many believe he is truly up and running. But what follows is far more complicated. Lingard goes through periods of deep personal struggle, something he only admits publicly much later. He talks about insomnia, anxiety, heavy family responsibilities, and a mental pressure he can no longer manage. His performances collapse abruptly. In 2019 to 2020, he sinks completely. No goals, no assists in the Premier League. Lingard disappears from the starting 11, then almost from the squad entirely. The loan move to West Ham in early 2021 then feels like a resurrection. He finds his form again, scores freely, and becomes an influential player once more. But the comeback is only a flash. Manchester United never truly reintegrate him. Nottingham Forest come next, but he never rediscovers the level that once made him a Premier League regular. Then his career unravels. A long spell without a club, failed training stints with Al Ettifaq and West Ham. Nothing sticks, and in February 2024, he shocks everyone by signing for FC Seoul in South Korea on a 2-year deal. There, the same issues return: inconsistency, lack of impact, and a difficult adaptation. On December 5th, 2025, Seoul announces his departure at the end of the season. Today, Jesse Lingard is without a club at 33 years old. No retirement announced, but no solid project either. A player who reached the heights of the Premier League and the World Cup, then gradually slipped out of the very top level. Eden Hazard was one of the most spectacular players of his generation. At Chelsea, he ruled the Premier League. He dribbled past defenders as if it were a game, created danger wherever he went, and did it all with an almost insolent ease. His final match with Chelsea, the 2019 Europa League final, is the perfect summary of who he was. 2 goals, an assist, a trophy, and a constant smile. It was the ideal ending before what was supposed to be the peak of his career. Real Madrid then paid around 115 million euros to sign him. They had just lost Cristiano Ronaldo and saw Hazard as his natural successor. But what followed turned into a nightmare. He arrived for pre-season overweight, a detail that might have seemed minor, except that 1 month later, his ankle was fractured by a tackle from Thomas Meunier. A metal plate was inserted into his foot, but it prevented him from regaining his explosiveness. His entire game was built on his first steps, on his ability to accelerate suddenly, and that weapon almost disappeared overnight. The setbacks piled up, the pain too. Hazard played with the fear of getting injured, no longer dared to take players on, no longer dared to run the way he used to. The Bernabeu does not forgive. The mockery came about his weight, his injuries. In June 2023, Real Madrid announced his departure. In October 2023, Hazard announced his retirement at just 32 years old, an abrupt, almost silent ending for a player who had lit up stadiums just a few years earlier. And yet, after retiring, he often repeated that he had no regrets, that he simply followed his instinct and that his body had said stop. We've just gone through 10 new stories of players whose careers faded far too early. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want a part 3, just say so in the comments. Don't hesitate to subscribe, like, and support the channel to boost the video. We'll be back very soon for what's next. See you soon.